For a growing number of MPs, the nature and tone of political discourse has changed, and not for the better. MP Julie Dzerowicz is the latest example of increasing threats and vandalism that elected officials and their staff are facing. The Toronto Liberal MP's constituency office was vandalized overnight with red paint reading, "Rafa is burning. Toronto will too."
Anybody in my community will tell you I will get in front of all of them and talk to them about the hardest topics that we have. But we do not sign up for death threats. We do not sign up for our families to be threatened, for people to protest in terms of our personal houses. We don't sign up for our staff to feel unsafe and to not be able to do their jobs. We do not sign up or encourage any type of illegal behavior.
Now, this incident comes the day after the Sergeant-at-Arms for the House of Commons testified at committee about the dramatic increase in threats to MPs over the last 5 years.
In 2019, there was approximately 8 files we opened up on threat behaviors towards either a direct or indirect threat towards an MP, and in 2023, there was 530 files opened, so that's a significant increase.
The Power Panel's back on this one. Sherelle Evelyn, Jordan Likeness, Tim Powers, and Amanda Alvaro. Sherelle, I want to start just there with the Sergeant-at-Arms. 800% increase in files open. That means they've reached out to police, they've reached out to authorities, they've reached out with whoever to deal with it. That number shocked me when I saw it. Perhaps it shouldn't because of the various stories we've seen, but to see it quantified in that scale, that's really something.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is something that, the whole times we've been covering. It's become a real problem and a real issue, and you can kind of link it right back through the rise and prominence of social media. People create these communities online, whether it's, becomes parasocial relationships, they want to build up their follower account, they want to say and do the most outlandish things possible. Or it's a matter of, simply monkey see, monkey do, right? MPs are also not treating each other with respect and with any modicum of order. So when you see a lot of, not saying that they are causing the issue, but they're also not helping. You have people in the House, you sometimes see them, saying, "Oh, say that," or will you say that to me outside, knowing that if they said the things that they say in the chamber, outside of the chamber, they are getting into very legally murky territory because of their privilege. And there is no real rules, and that's part of the study that's going on right now with the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, is that there are no real rules between how MPs deal with each other. There's no kind of anti-harassment structure between MPs. It's between MPs and staff and between all those other things. But MP to MP relations, that's kind of fair game. And when your whole ethos is to generate as much interest as possible, that leads to people kind of feeling emboldened and wanting to do, "Oh, well, I can say the same things. This is your enemy. Well, now you're my enemy too. I can call you names. I'm going to go one step further. You're putting up somebody's picture online and saying, 'Hey, this person is the problem. I'm going to go do something about it,' and on and on and on. And it's really bad.
Tim, it's almost like people in this country seem to forget there's a man sitting in jail for driving a truck full of guns into the gate at Rideau Cottage to try to get to the Prime Minister's house with a weapon, in the last couple of years. Now we see what happened in Julie Dzerowicz's constituency office. You see other things like this. I know that is maybe tied to the very specific nature of what's happening in Gaza. But what I struggle with is, does what's happening in politics affect society? Does what's happening in society affect politics? How does this circle of the conflict and the mistreatment of each other affect each other?
Well, just picking up on something Sherelle said, people online see the carrot. "Oh, I can get followers, I can get attention, I can get notoriety, I'll get lots of likes." Where's the stick, right? And there's a challenge I think people understand about the stick. So where's freedom of speech? Where is harassment? There aren't a lot of, as policing authorities have said, a lot of tools to deal with the online threats. Or there are so many of them, there aren't enough officers to go after them. And it's not just happening in Parliament. It's not just happening online. It carries it off into so many other aspects of society. You, I, Sherelle, Amanda, Jordan, all have small kids. Go to a sports field. Go to a sports field, watch a competitive match in just about any sport, and you'll see behavior more than you used to see when we were kids, of people getting aggressive and challenging people and being rude to people and threats coming like that. I mean, ultimately, it's up to us, right? One thing I will say about this group of people and other panels you have here, we may disagree and all of that, but we try and do it with respect. We have to lead every day doing that, as do others, whether they be in Parliament, whether they be on sports fields. It's slow, but that's the stuff that's going to maybe make a dent here.
But, you know, Jordan, we've seen a lot of examples, you know, where, and this is being studied at the committee, Cheryl referenced it, that, you know, politicians say something online on social media to unleash their followers on them. And there's like no accountability for it, even though you're kind of like pointing them in this direction, saying, go get them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's so troubling when we see that, because we can look globally, like this isn't just a phenomenon that's happening in Canada. An increase in harassment and violence actually against elected people is happening globally. You see it in the US. You've seen a huge rise in incidents where officials are being targeted and there's been attacks. You're seeing it in Europe right now. The European election is on. There have been a number of violent attacks. You know, you hear people in Germany saying that some of these have reminded them of the 1930s. Like, there's a degree to which that people feel both emboldened, some very extreme people feel emboldened to take that rhetoric off the internet and into real life. And also, I think it's really coupled with some of the things that Tim has said about dehumanization of elected people. Somehow, at some point along the way, it's become legitimate to personally target politicians. And they're not really seen as people anymore. They're seen as legitimate targets of harassment, of even violence in some cases. And I think it's really worrying. And really, who pays the price on this? Well, it's, you know, not to be corny, but it's our democracy, right? It means that maybe fewer people of marginalized background want to present themselves for these jobs. Maybe fewer women want to run or do journalism in public or do other things like that. Because this harassment and those threats can really actually curb a lot of that debate. So I think it's something that's really worrying. And, you know, when I look at what's happening in other places, I worry that we could move beyond harassment into some scarier places.
Well, you know, Amanda, to Jordan's point about fewer women, you know, it's Julie Dzerowicz today. I spoke to Pam DeMoff a couple of weeks ago, who's not reoffering because of what's happening there. We've seen Ikra Khalid talk about it. She's going to testify. Michelle Rempel-Garner has been confronted in public. You know, Chrystia Freeland has been challenged. And in Quebec municipal politics, a lot of female councillors and mayors just getting out, you know, not even halfway through the term in some cases. There is a definite targeting of women politicians in this larger, more intense, degrading environment.
Definitely. In another role that I have as co-host of a podcast, which is really aimed at women and engagement of women in politics, where we talk to a lot of women leaders, premiers, former prime minister, MPs, MLAs. And what we hear consistently is that the number that was talked about yesterday is not that shocking, because the level of toxicity, especially in the last 5 years, like even anecdotally, we know how horrible it's been. And a lot of that is happening online in an anonymous way, where it's easy to be, you know, the keyboard warrior. But we've set the bar so low. And I'm going to take a little bit of a partisan aim here, because I think it's important to do it. When you have the leader of the opposition, Poilievre, who believes that it's okay to stand with protesters in front of "Duck You, Trudeau" signs, we are setting the bar so low. So we have, you know, when we do that, to your point, we're sending this message out that not only is it a toxic environment to be a part of, but you too can participate in it, seemingly without consequence. And I do think that it has a disproportionate effect on women. We hear it all the time. Women are turned off by it. And when they're turned off, they're also tuning out. So whether it's that they're walking away from the ability to run in politics, or they've held a position, they just don't want to be a part of it anymore, or frankly, if it's women even being involved or engaged, because, you know, they're so turned off by the rhetoric and the hyperbole and the awful language that's being used. It's okay to use terms like wacko in the House of Commons. Like, we have let it go go to such a state, it's a cesspool online, it's almost as bad in the House of Commons. So I think it really not only does a disservice across the board to political discourse, but I think the biggest risk that it poses is that women will walk away, not just from running for these positions, but actually being engaged.
Go ahead.
This won't make for fantastic television, but I'm respectfully disagree on one point with my friend Amanda. I think she's entirely right on the impact. On what's happening to women and all of that is wrong. I would just say, Poilievre, I agree, shouldn't have done what he done with that flag, but equally, just, again, not to get overly partisan, but the Prime Minister has more responsibilities in a circumstance like this, and I think he acknowledged himself some of the things he said in the early days of the convoy about how he referred to people who were protesting were not helpful. They all almost need to exercise a little bit more discipline. It is easy, as Jordan alluded to turn on the flame, but we're getting to a place, if we're always turning on the flame, we're going to burn the whole friggin' village down. And it won't be able to say it was Joe's fault or it was Frank's fault. You all got to assume responsibility.
Cheryl, one of the other interesting things I thought from the Sergeant at Arms, like I look at, CBC.ca, we had to disable comments years ago. We post stuff on YouTube now, we don't have comments. I have abandoned Twitter because I was tired of walking through the cesspool of people's rage and damaging my mental health. But what the Sergeant at Arms has said is that since Elon Musk bought Twitter, they can't get engagement from that platform to deal with harassing posts. This is a real problem, as these things have this prominence and zero accountability.
Right, and because there's zero accountability, that means that you don't know what corner to turn to, so you just have to spend money. And so for all these people who are concerned about the state of our, fiscal situation, this is costing us money. Like the Board of Internal Economy just recently approved millions of dollars to protect MPs both on and off the Hill. So not only events that MPs are going to, that they're hosting, but events that they're just going to. If there's going to be some sort of threat program, they've expanded their panic button program. These are all very serious, real issues. And that's just if you can get any sort of protection. I mean, there's been people, I know journalists who've gone to police with, hey, I am getting these threats, and if you can even get to talk to somebody, let alone file a report, then there's and they kind of say, well, there's nothing we can do. Let us know if they kind of show up at your door. And I know that that's an issue that the RCMP commissioner has raised, saying that maybe there needs to be legal framework changes to the criminal code so that people can actually be charged. That there is that stick, that we actually have, but has a cost not just to democracy, but there's a financial cost as well. And if that doesn't move people, I don't know what will.
Well, it creates a distance between the politicians and the public, right? Which is something you don't really measure in dollars and cents, but that matters, Jordan, in politics.
It's a self-reinforcing cycle, basically, and I know, and I'm sure you do as well, a lot of politicians who used to maybe do the thing where they'd hold the coffee house, they'd go to Tim Hortons, they'd be there for a couple hours, constituents could come and meet them without an appointment. And they can't do that anymore because they're concerned about their personal safety. And so when there's no longer opportunities like that to interact with your elected member of parliament as a human and to see them in your community, it has a cost to our democracy. And I think it's something that really we should all be pretty worried about, because that's going to get worse with all these trends, not better. And it really requires everybody to do their part in changing the tone.
Yeah, and Tim, to go back to your earlier point about the tone we try for here, I call it nonpartisan partisanship. You can come in with your perspectives and your beliefs, so you don't have to be a bad word about it.
We just talk about you off air in bad language.
Anyway, gang, thanks for that. It was a good conversation on a couple of big topics. I want to thank the Power Panel very much. Amanda Alvaro, Jordan Likeness, Tim Powers, and Cheryl Evelyn. Thanks so much, gang.